Eating Guide. Boss with Kids Variety+Sweet Pet+Dog Blood+Strong+Workplace. This article is also known as Records of the Career Growth of the Charming Beauty, Treading on Pits, and Mr. Bob Brings His Children, Obediently Waits for His Wife to Come Home. Recently, there has been a shocking rumor circulating in the financial industry that Yan Huaiwen, the head of Zhiheng Group, has retired from the second tier. The dignified man took off his suit, rolled up his sleeves, and took care of his children at home, while the busy business person became the little treasure of the Yan family. Xiao Bao, call your mother and urge her to come home from work. Xiao Bao, let's sneak to the company to see what mom is doing, okay? Xiao Bao, mom is angry. Can you perform a talent? Xiao Bao said, this family can't do without me. Regarding the relationship between the two, Yan Qing thought she was a mother who relied on her son's wealth, and she married Yan Huaiwen before falling in love. Eventually, her secret love came true. Yan Huaiwen thought that Yan Qing would abandon him from beginning to end, thanks to him enduring humiliation and being able to break the mirror and reunite. On the night they opened up, they realized it was a two-way secret love. Keywords of the novel. Madam dominates the workplace, there are no pop-ups behind the CEO, Madam dominates the workplace, and the CEO takes care of children behind the CEO. Download the full text, Madam dominates the workplace, and the CEO takes care of children behind the CEO. Latest chapters for reading. Chapter 1. Disappointment in Love. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1. Disappointment in Love. My head hurts so much, I feel uncomfortable. This voice carries a hint of softness and a hangover like hoarseness. The woman's delicate and smooth arms slid out of the blanket, caressing her forehead and gently rubbing it, as if she had a long dream. In her dream, she actually transformed into a flower picker and successfully flirted with a pure and untainted mountain flower, but then it seemed as if she had somehow angered the flower. This flower is mostly a king flower, and it begins to become violent. When it wants to escape this terrifying control, it is subjected to terrible extreme punishment, and the whole person is plunged into pain that is about to be split open. Afterwards, I can't remember very clearly. The woman slowly opened her eyes, hesitated for a moment, and sat up with confusion about where she was. Looking at the surrounding furnishings and decorations, it should be inside the hotel, with thick blackout curtains in the rooms. The indoor light is dim and indistinguishable day and night. Hiss. Before she could straighten up, Yan Qing took a deep breath in pain and fell back again. It's just a dream. How could she feel like her whole body was scattered, and her waist and knees were sore and weak, making it difficult for her to exert force? What's going on here? Seeing the red marks on her wrist, Yan Qing finally lost her face and all the signs suggested that she was being forcibly loved. At this moment, a scene suddenly flashed back to her mind. On a pair of slender wrists with fair skin, wrapped around a deep red silk tie with dark stripes, this scene is really tempting. And the woman who was restricted from movement had no panic or fear on her face, just pursed her lips and struggled discontentedly. Why are you so stingy? Just let me touch it a few times. Hey, don't tie me up, I need to be on top. It turned out that she forced others to eat and wipe herself clean. Yan Qing covered her face and fell onto the bed, humming and groaning, unwilling to face her bold side. After repeatedly closing and opening her eyes with great effort, the scene in front of her did not change at all. She was still in the room of this hotel, and this memory became even clearer. But she couldn't remember the man's face, and the soreness on his body told her that it was really not a dream. Just yesterday, the person's white moonlight made a strong comeback and announced in a media interview that her purpose of returning home was for him. And Yan Qing, the grand and secret love that belonged only to her, had to declare failure. She licked her wounds alone like a small beast. In the neglected corner, she tactfully chose to drink alone and get drunk. Yan Qing had a misconception about her alcohol tolerance. She didn't expect it to break off just after drinking a glass, and in the end, she probably completely let herself go. She even had sex with an unknown man. But with her mind full of that person, she probably used that unlucky guy as a substitute. Even though she has reached adulthood and it is normal for everyone to take what they need, she still has to spend some time digesting the disappointment in love. But before Yan Qing had passed away for 2 minutes, a deadly serial call came. "Yan Qing, what's wrong with you?" The female voice on the phone was not only full of vitality, but also deafening. "If you don't want to do it anymore, just say it directly. It's already 8:55, you know. There's a signing ceremony later, why haven't you arrived at the venue to prepare?" She moved the phone to confirm the time and immediately felt a chill in her heart. She hurriedly said, "I'm sorry, Sister Fong, it's my fault. I'll be there soon." This is probably the sadness of social animals, the busy work in the workplace can temporarily forget all the pain. Yan Qing gritted her teeth and endured the pain, simply washed and changed into clothes, while placing an order on the ride-hailing app and quickly leaving the hotel room. But because she was in a hurry, she missed the honey water and hangover medicine placed on the table, and naturally couldn't see a note below, with strong and elegant handwriting. At this time, it was the rush hour for work in B City, and the roads were congested with traffic. Yan Qing's bike had not arrived yet, so she couldn't sweep a blue bike. She rode so hard that the wheels were flying, and finally arrived at the office building at 9:55. Her legs were almost numb, and she rushed towards the elevator door that was about to close, ignoring her image and shouting, "Wait for me." By a hair's breadth, the elevator door still mercilessly closed in front of Yan Qing. By the time Yan Qing ran up to the 18th floor, gasping for breath, the signing ceremony had already begun. She gently pushed open the door of the venue and quickly moved to the woman dressed in a black professional suit, dressed in exquisite and capable attire, calling out obediently. "Sister Fong, I don't need to hear any of your reasons, just look at the results." Chen Fong glanced at her with his spare light, pushed his framed glasses, and directly refused her explanation. Yan Qing silently stepped aside, paying attention to the movements on stage. At this point, the signing ceremony is almost coming to an end. Today is a project between Zhiheng Group and a certain construction company to build an entertainment industry base. Yan Qing looked at the man on stage, lost in thought, and even the swelling and pain in her legs were forgotten for a moment. He was wearing a sleek and well-cut dark suit, which appeared wider and longer in shoulders and legs. He was gentle and elegant, and calmly shook hands with his partner for a photo. His smile was like a warm spring breeze, making people feel comfortable and smooth at first glance. After a few simple greetings, the man strode down the steps and walked towards himself. "Mr. Yan, we still need your instructions on the marketing department's planning proposal." The CEO, who was waiting on the side, respectfully handed over a document to Chen Fong. Yan Huaiwen nodded and said, "Call on the marketing department and the production and research department to go to the conference room together." At this moment, Yan Qing, a newcomer in the workplace standing by the door, was about to open the door for her boss, but something went wrong. Perhaps it was after a night of practice activities, and riding a dynamic bike all the way, coupled with just standing in the venue and not moving around. These legs suddenly start up, a bit out of control. Yan Qing stumbled under her feet, in a position where her left leg tripped over her right leg, and she was about to fall on the foot of her own CEO. Amidst the screams of everyone, she felt the warmth emanating from her waist. A large hand with distinct joints caught her in time, so as not to embarrass her in public and throw her dog into the mud. Yan Qing exclaimed in her heart that it was a dangerous situation and wanted to see which kind-hearted person saved her. This was a kindness that saved her in front of the big boss, and she must repay it well. When I turned my head, my cheeks accidentally brushed against a soft and smooth object, which was a silk tie. The style and touch of this tie are very familiar. Before she could think it over, she saw the necktie owner's Adam's apple twitch slightly, his voice deep and gentle, "Why show off? If you're feeling unwell, take a leave and go back to rest. Yan Qing turned her head and saw Yan Huaiwen's smooth jawline and green stubble on her chin. Her gaze involuntarily dodged, afraid to look up, and naturally did not notice the narrowness in the person's eyes. After being released by Fu Zheng, Yan Qing lowered her head and expressed her gratitude in a restrained manner, with a beautiful curve bending her neck. "I'm not in any way, thank you, Mr. Yan." Chen Fang took a deep look at Yan Qing and left with the group, lost in thought. On the 23rd floor, there is a meeting room dedicated to the CEO, and the sound of paper flipping through pages is clearly audible. Everyone is holding their breath and waiting. Long Finger only flipped through a few pages of the marketing department's plan, and the man didn't finish reading it, his tone became cold. The feasibility is extremely low and lacks research support. The marketing department's report is really getting better and better. Yan Huaiwen lifted his eyelids, threw the documents back onto the table, and scanned the subordinates of the marketing department expressionlessly. As the helmsman of Zhiheng Group, Yan Huaiwen has always been gentle and easy-going. Although he is strict in public affairs, he never embarrasses his subordinates. However, at this moment, his face is as cold as ice, making everyone shiver. Who wrote this report? Yan Qing, who sat the farthest away from the CEO, raised her hand trembling but her voice was clear. "Mr. Yan, I wrote this report, please correct it." Yan Huaiwen raised his eyebrows in surprise, picked up the plan again, carefully flipped through it, pondered for a moment, and then said. "The plan is quite unique to newcomers, with rich but overly idealistic content. However, it is also a common mistake for newcomers. The production and research department is responsible for supplementing the necessary data in the plan and submitting it for review next week." Yan Qing blinked a little unexpectedly. This report was a hot potato, and she had changed it 6 times in a row without being passed. She also took the risk and knew in her heart where her level was. It was just a passing line. Mr. Yan was particularly kind today. After the meeting, the marketing manager who had worked in the company for 7 years sighed, "Mr. Yan was just about to go crazy, did you know?" Then he patted Yan Qing's shoulder and said, "Yan Qing, you're really a lucky little star. This planning proposal has been revised 6 times. If it hasn't been approved yet, judging from Mr. Yan's expression, I'll have to pack up and leave today." Yan Qing smiled and didn't answer. She didn't take her superior's words seriously. Judging from her days working in the marketing department, this manager is used to being slippery-tongued and not doing practical things. "Manager, I would like to take a leave tomorrow." Yan Qing is actually a student at B University who came to Zhiheng for an internship. As someone who has both academic and career responsibilities, there are some matters that need to be handled by the school as graduation approaches, and she is really lacking in skills. But no one expected that this would be her last time coming to Zhiheng. No prize guessing. Who is the male lead at the scene of the forced love incident? Welcome to the new book. Let's embark on a sweet and sour journey together. Seeking collections, tickets, and comments for solicitation. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Zhiheng, dedicated to Yunheng. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Zhiheng, dedicated to Yunheng. Yan Qingqing sorted out the materials she was preparing to submit, and someone came to the classroom to call her. Yan, someone is looking for you at the school gate." She turned her head and saw that it was her roommate Xia Zhi. She asked in confusion, "Someone is looking for me. Who is it?" "I don't know her, she shouldn't be from our school, but she's definitely a beautiful woman. She looks completely different from you." "Hello. What does it mean to be completely opposite to me? What strange description is that?" Yan Qing glanced helplessly at Xia Zhi. Upon receiving this gaze, Xia Zhi immediately made a heart-shaped gesture. "Your gaze is both charming and charged, I just hate that I don't have that function, otherwise it must be." As she spoke, she frowned and winked at her, laughing with a sly smile. Yan Qin was amused by this exaggerated performance and burst into laughter. Do you know the latest trend of top-notch pure white flowers? That's the one. I heard that Yan Xuechang's white moonlight is of this type. Yan Qin tidied up the clutter on the table and said nonchalantly, is that right? Her heart sank and she guessed who the person looking for her was. It was impossible to hide, so she took a deep breath. GZ, can you help me take the materials back? I'll go to the door first to take a look. A pure and sweet little white flower and a seductive and bright beauty stood at the bustling entrance of the university, attracting the attention of many people. Xiaobaiwa saw more and more onlookers and suggested, Miss Yan, there are too many people here. Let's take a step to talk. Yan Qin followed her to a cafe near the school and, after sitting down, spoke up first. Miss Yun, what can I do for you? Yunheng pinned his hair, which had been blown away by the wind, behind his ear and smiled, you are a smart person. Since you know who I am, I believe I came to see you for some reason. You should have a deep understanding. To get straight to the point, I'll be a little more direct. I heard you're interning in the marketing department of Zhiheng. As far as I know, this job was obtained through the help of Professor Huaiwen. Upon hearing this, Yan Qin frowned and said, I'm not. Don't rush to deny it yet. Yunheng took out a stack of photos from his limited edition bag and lightly tapped them with his fingers. I also heard that there was a time when you were imitating me, from dressing up to having a hairstyle. Miss Yan is so beautiful, but she is willing to be her substitute, which is really surprising. Upon seeing these photos, Yan Qin's throat became dry and speechless. It's not wrong that the person in this photo is her. On the anniversary of B University, when she first met Yan Huaiwen who came to participate in an event, she felt as if she had been stunned. She couldn't help but want to know what kind of girl he had liked before. She was extremely concerned and used all her poor methods privately, secretly infatuated with Yan Huaiwen. In a few days, Yan Qin woke up. If he loved the shadow of another person in himself, neither of them would have achieved happiness. But how did Yunheng get this photo? Yan Qin frowned. I admit that Huaiwen is a bit special to you. He has taken you to attend events and also had his special assistant, Chen Fong, personally take you to work. He has shown you a lot of care and sent you some wrong signals. Yunheng chuckled lightly and continued nonchalantly, but this is just because I heard that others are kind-hearted and considerate of the friendship between fellow disciples and siblings. It may have given you some illusions that you shouldn't have, but I have returned to my home country and will not let such things happen again in the future. The woman raised her delicate face, and the aura she had developed since childhood was overwhelming. This is HBS admission recommendation letter, and you can choose to study and pursue further education at the best business school. Or rather, if Miss Yan prefers to get something for nothing, you can offer a price. As long as you can stay away from Huaiwen and Zhiheng, everything is easy to say. She took out an envelope and pushed it towards Yan Qin's side, generously opening her own chips. Upon hearing these words, Yan Qin's eyes seemed to anger as she was provoked by such humiliation. She replied with a straight and round tone, thank you for looking up to me. First of all, Zhiheng is a top-tier company in the industry and a place that every finance student aspires to. I am no exception. This job was recommended by Professor Zhang, but it was also because of my top academic performance that I was given the opportunity to be recommended. She argued back one by one in a clear and organized manner. Furthermore, I have the freedom to dress and dress up according to my preferences. It's all my own business, and Miss Yun has to take care of it. Is it a bit too lenient to interfere, and taking photos of me without my permission is a violation of my personal privacy? Yan Qin tugged at the corner of her mouth and continued to counterattack, let me offer you a price. I want 1 billion yuan, can you afford it? Emotions cannot be used as chips, and I think you should understand this truth. There is a saying that when spoken improperly, I have to say, do you know what a qualified X is? It's about being calm and not bothering or entangled anymore. The clouds and breeze on Yunheng's face disappeared, completely cooling down. This mouth is really impressive. I guess you don't understand the relationship between men and women. Huaiwen and I just had a little disagreement, so I won't bother you. Two people come and go, and no one wants to fall behind in terms of momentum. Not only did Yunheng think of something, but he changed his face and smiled sweetly. Do you know why Huaiwen's company is called Zhiheng? Zhiheng, dedicated to Yunheng, can you understand now? Defeating opponents does not require lengthy speeches. In fact, as long as you grasp their weaknesses, you can hit them with just one strike. And Yan Qing's weakness is everything about Yan Huaiwen. Yan Qing seemed to have been struck by lightning, stunned on the spot. She never thought that the words Zhiheng had this romantic meaning. Yunheng's gaze as he looked at the bright woman gradually dimmed, and she threw another heavyweight message to Yan Qing. By the way, in order to ensure everything is safe, I contacted Aunt Yan before contacting you. I heard that you are from a single-parent family and your mother has always been very strict with you. I had a great conversation with Aunt Yan and reached an agreement. Now, 1 million has been transferred to her account. She leisurely raised her hand and looked at the precious watch. I think Aunt Yan's plane has already landed by now. Yan Qing clenched the cup in front of her, her fingertips losing their color due to excessive force. Her eyes were full of disbelief, and she even trembled slightly. She gritted her teeth and asked, "Why are you doing this?" "Why, of course, it's because I only want him to belong to me, and no one should think about him." Yunheng's words suddenly became excited, with a paranoid feeling of disregarding the lives of others. This shop was also frequently visited by Huaiwen and I before. The taste of this coffee is really unforgettable. Yunheng looked at her with a victorious attitude, picked up his cup and took a light sip, showing off the little memories she and he had. Aunt Yan is very angry, so I won't delay your mother-daughter reunion. Then she stood up and smoothed the wrinkles on her coat with her hand, leaving Yan Qing with a self-seeking look. When Yunheng walked out of the store and no one was seen again, Yan Qing slumped on the booth by the window, losing focus in her eyes. Zhiheng, dedicated to Yunheng, is this the original meaning? Does Yan Huaiwen love a man who is willing to dedicate all his career to his beloved woman like this? It's not just men, there's nothing to argue about. There are many people in the world who are chasing after their mothers. They all line up at the entrance of the dormitory. No, they line up at the school gate. Yan Qing had a sour nose, and the tears swirling in her eyes couldn't be contained, falling one by one onto the table. "Are you okay?" A tissue was kindly handed over. The waiter at the CAFA has been observing the situation here, and the atmosphere between the two women was once tense. He was afraid that the two would splash coffee at each other, which would affect the normal operation of the shop. "Thank you." Yan Qing took the tissue and wiped away the tears of frustration. "Look, there is still great love in the world. Only working people can perceive the emotions of the lower-class people. Those young ladies and despicable capitalists are really annoying." "You're welcome." The waiter stood next to her and continued, "Miss, our new store is open. If you want to apply for a card, you can enjoy a 15% discount on this coffee order." The waiter showed a brilliant smile with 8 teeth, resembling a standard business. "Don't do it." Yan Qing, who was heartbroken, replied fiercely. "Even working people only love my money. What kind of human suffering is this?" Yan Qing secretly swore in her heart that women still have to pursue careers and climb to the pinnacle of life by earning money, which is more important than anything else. But later on, Yan Qing still applied for the card. It wasn't because of the salesperson's promotion that she was moved, but because of thanking the young man for his many words. She noticed the strangeness of Yunheng. This store was also a place where Huaiwen and I used to frequently visit. This CAFA is clearly a new store opening, but the face-changing king claims to have been with Mr. Yan before, and she is clearly lying. The water in a woman's mind is crying, and she really calms down. Although Yan Qing's eyes were still red, her IQ had gone up, and she decided to think carefully about the areas where things were not right. What is true in Yunheng's mouth? Are you intentionally guiding yourself to daydream? But later on, Yan Qing realized that she had no time to think about what was true and what was false. Because Yan Huaiwen came over with a fierce force. Yunheng really notified his mother, and her mother actually took in that 1 million. Yan Huaiwen deliberately flew over, believing that Yan Qing had become a despicable mistress in breaking up the beautiful relationship between the golden boy and the jade girl. After catching Yan Qing, she scolded her head and face. You really let me down. You can do such a heartless thing, why are you so despicable? Yan Qing grew up with Yan Huaiwen being beaten and scolded since she was young. Faced with her mother who was waving her teeth and claws, she was already able to handle it calmly. Mom, I really haven't had anything to do with Yan Huaiwen. I just want to work at Zhiheng, Yan Qing tried to explain with a good temper and said seriously. I want to fight for my career, after all, the opportunity to work at Zhiheng is very rare. After obtaining my graduation certificate and degree certificate in a month, I can apply for permanent employment. With such a promising career prospect, I don't want to give up easily. Yan Huaiwen saw that she still didn't give up and said sternly, didn't you always want to know who your father was? After speaking, she took out a photo, and the man on it was Yan Huaiwen's father Yan Zhihao, exuding a mature, handsome, and elegant temperament. She often saw news about him on television. What does this mean? Yan Qing's face instantly turned pale. Yan Huaiwen, with a stern tone, completely defeated her and shattered any possibility between her and Yan Huaiwen. You and Yan Huaiwen are half-siblings. Will lovers eventually become siblings? What kind of magical plot is this? Yan Qing instinctively refuses to believe it. Until Yan Huaiwen threw the intimate photo of the two of them when they were young in front of her, her body swayed and swayed, unable to support herself anymore, and she fell to the ground, with black shadows dancing in front of her. This sentence, from today on, is like a nightmare, starting to haunt Yan Qing day and night. The sour and refreshing plot has arrived, dear children, hold on. Bitter first, sweet later, sweet pet plot is coming soon, end of this chapter. Chapter 3. Crocodile's Tears. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Crocodile's Tears 3 years later, in Yaocheng, in the garden downstairs of a sanatorium. The tree shade is dense, and the breeze is gentle. Even in winter afternoons, the sunlight still emits a soft glow. But the atmosphere between the two standing under the tree was not as peaceful as the scenery. The middle-aged woman with a thin expression on her face was full of energy and sneered, "TSK, who's here? You've finally arrived. The whole company relies on you to make money, right?" The middle-aged woman disdainfully rolled her eyelids and squinted at the young woman in front of her, continuing to be aggressive. Why are you dressing up like this and trying to seduce someone? You're such a cheap hoof. She cursed at people with a loud voice, looking very sturdy and not at all like someone who needed to recuperate here. The woman who was scolded lowered her head, unable to see her expression clearly, as if she had not heard the embarrassing words. The weather is good today, and there are many patients taking a walk in the sanatorium, but no one has come forward to persuade them because such things often happen. There were once kind-hearted people who spoke out to persuade them, but they were scolded by this crazy woman to the death. In fact, the woman's attire is not excessive, just an ordinary light blue professional suit that outlines a beautiful figure with beautiful curves. Yan Qinggang finished a high-level meeting at the company and was in contact with the secretary to handle the secondment procedures. After receiving a call from the sanatorium, he hurriedly arrived here. How many times have you been teaching me? Why don't you learn well or love yourself? What's the difference between dressing like this and being a street girl? You're a lowly embryo. Yan Qing finally lifted her head and decided to no longer endure, revealing her bright features. Her face was even more delicate than the flowers blooming behind her. She lifted her lips lightly, her voice not loud but her tone was extremely firm. "I'm going back to be city." The middle-aged woman's eyes were suddenly filled with vigilance, and she instinctively rushed forward to grab Yan Qing's collar, shaking and tearing, and shouting in despair. "What did you say? You're so bold, you've gone crazy. Who allowed you to go back? What are you going back for?" Yan Qing clenched her fingers, with red circles under her eyes, but loudly said word for word, "I'm going back to be city." Her voice was clear and her pronunciation was particularly clear. "As for why do we have to go back? Because I can't let my child be like me, my biological father is unknown." "Where did you come from, kid? That little slut has been around for a long time." As if thinking of something, he angrily pointed at Yan Qing's nose and asked, "That winter, you went to have a child, didn't you?" The middle-aged woman, knowing that she had been deceived, suddenly became angry and slapped her face. Yan Qing stood up straight as if she had expected, but stubbornly did not dodge. Until he was hit and turned his head, his thin body shook for a moment. Listening to this crisp and harsh voice, one knows that this slap must have used 10 to 10 force. "Okay, if your wings are hard, then you should go back to be city and find your mistress. Just treat me like I don't have your daughter." This middle-aged woman is none other than Yan Huaiwen. She mercilessly spoke insults to her daughter one after another, and proudly took out the killer weapon to sever the mother-daughter relationship, thinking that she could wait for Yan Qing to bow down and admit her mistake as usual. In recent years, Yan Huaiwen's temper has become increasingly fierce. It is unclear whether she no longer relies on Yan Qing's care and retirement after receiving Yunheng's 1 million yuan, or whether there is some extra reliance behind her. Although Yan Huaiwen received Yunheng's money, at first Yan Qing tried to understand her. After all, the temptation of money was too great. If we had just returned to Yao City, the relationship between the mother and daughter had reached a freezing point, and Yan Qing's world, which had suffered a double blow, was a bleak one. So, after something happened, Yan Qing truly fell into despair and pain. Before Yan Qing realized she was pregnant, Yan Huaiwen, who had given birth, sensitively noticed some signs and secretly added an excessive amount of saffron to her diet. Seeing that she didn't react much, she even secretly prescribed strong abortion pills. "Mom, what's wrong with me? Are you doing this to me?" Yan Qing held the medicine bottle and trembled all over, asking these words. "Have you ever asked me if you want this child, so you helped me make a decision? This lowly person can't give birth, got pregnant before marriage, and got pregnant. What a glorious thing." Yan Huaiwen frowned, her eyes full of disgust. "Is it because I took Yunheng's money? Is Yunheng your daughter? Why did you help her harm me? This child has nothing to do with Yan Huaiwen. Don't you feel sad when you see me in such pain?" Yan Qing stared closely at the other person's expression, afraid of missing a hint of warmth and emotion in her eyes. At that time, Yan Huaiwen remained silent and looked at her coldly. Yan Qing's eyes became increasingly sour until they were covered with tears, and she could no longer see Yan Huaiwen's expression clearly. "This medicine is deadly. Even if I die now, can you immediately treat me as if I don't have this daughter and continue playing cards tomorrow?" Yan Qing wished that Yan Huaiwen could refute her and say no, even if it was to evade her. As long as she was willing to say it, she would believe it. Watching Yan Huaiwen mercilessly turn around and leave, Yan Qing lay on the cold ground with tearful eyes, shaking her head slightly. She shouldn't have had any expectations for this heartless woman. What's the use of shaking her tail and begging for mercy? At this point, Yan Qing began to set up defenses against her, and after playing a miscarriage scene, she rented a house near the company. Using work as a reason, the number of times she returned home was even rarer. But Yan Huaiwen was in good health, but she clamored to live in the best sanatorium in Yaocheng. Therefore, they did not meet many times, but each time it was her own unilateral clamor, as if she wanted to vent some unknown crazy emotions on herself. Call it up immediately, wave it away immediately. She just came a little late this time, and Yan Huaiwen used this excuse to humiliate her again as a slut. The slap just now completely awakened Yan Qing, and her left cheek began to heat and swell. The bright red 5 fingerprints gradually appeared on her fair and tender face, further highlighting her pale complexion. She grew up in a single-parent family and didn't know what it was like to have a father's love. She only had a mother who treated her harshly and harshly, often scolding and scolding. She asked in her heart thousands of times when she was young, how could a mother not love her child? She used to yearn for her mother's love and recognition the most, but now it all seems like a joke. After a moment of silence, Yan Qing weakly and firmly said, "I'm leaving." Yan Huaiwen realized that she couldn't hold on to her obedient daughter anymore. She was shocked and quickly stepped forward to grab her, scrutinizing Yan Qing's expression. She panicked and said, You can't go anywhere. Oh my goodness, look at this heartless person who has to leave his own mother behind. I've been pulling you up with a bunch of feces and urine, you're really a white-eyed wolf. Yan Huaiwen sat on the ground shouting like a splash, even squeezing out a few crocodile tears. Am I really your daughter? Yan Qing said with a smile on her face. Embrace your beauty, end of this chapter. Chapter 4. My Baby. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 My Baby. Although it was a question, the tone was unquestionable, clearly knowing that the two were not biological mothers and daughters. Yan Huaiwen's face began to show a look of fear. She opened her mouth wide, panting heavily, and couldn't say a complete sentence for a moment. You. What, when? You're asking me when I found out, right? Yan Qing's eyes were empty, and there was no sadness, only numbness. She gradually approached the woman who had claimed to be her biological mother for 25 years and demanded that she obey. Thanks to you, Run has been in poor health since birth. Last month, he was diagnosed with a rare MN blood type. On the doctor's advice, for safety reasons, I checked the family's blood type. At the medical examination center of the sanatorium, I arranged for the nurse to take 2 extra tubes of blood last time. Surprisingly, you have type O blood while I have type AB blood. After knowing the blood types of the 2 individuals, she couldn't believe it. Yan Huaiwen had been deceiving her by claiming that she had type A blood, thinking that it might be due to a laboratory error or some other reason. Yan Qing held on to her last hope and went for a paternity test. Only last week did she know the test results. It turned out that not only was her biological father unknown, but she also lost her mother. Many things suddenly have a good explanation, why she has been beaten and scolded for no reason since childhood, and why her mother is different from others. Even if it's not biological, cats and dogs should still have feelings after being raised for more than 20 years. Yan Huaiwen, for the sake of the Yun family's money, even resorted to deceiving her into being siblings with Yan Huaiwen, giving her a series of fatal blows. Even though she may be harsh to herself, Yan Qing stubbornly wants to be bound by this blood relationship, because this is the only person she is closest to in the world. What a joke! She had tears in her eyes, but she laughed out loud, laughing at the absurdity of fate. Then he took out his phone from his bag and shook it gently. There is still a paternity test report in his phone, so you should be aware of the result. Do you need to confirm it again? Yan Huaiwen is a person who is strong on the outside but weak on the inside. She is worried that she already knows who her biological father and mother are, and her biological parents are not the ones she can offend, so she dare not do it again. But I couldn't see her leave with my own eyes. If she were really with Yan Huaiwen, her plans for so many years would have been in vain and her efforts would have been in vain. Yan Huaiwen figured out the key and immediately rushed up to embrace her leg, muttering in fear, "No, you can't go, you can't go." Yan Qing, as a person, has always made good decisions and will never turn back. She forcefully broke open Yan Huaiwen's fingers, one by one, tightly grasping her calf. "Since you have taken care of me, I will also take care of you until your old age. You can stay in a nursing home, which can be considered as enjoying your old age. I will pay the fees on time every month, so don't worry." Anyway, as an adoptive mother, Yan Huaiwen did indeed raise her up, but this slap, this lowly voice, finally made her abandon this false mother-daughter relationship. Before leaving, Yan Qing bent down and her eyes began to recover. She looked at the malicious woman sitting on the ground in a dejected manner and whispered in her ear, "From now on, I will make my own decisions. We will try not to meet again in the future, as it will only make each other feel bored. By the way, there is one more thing you need to remember. My child is not a lowly race, he is the precious treasure on my heart." After speaking, she straightened her back and, contrary to the way she had been scolded and her head drooped when she first came over, her neck arched gracefully. This time, Yan Qing did not have any attachment and resolutely turned around and left. As she walked out of the sanatorium, a warm breeze came rushing towards her. Her left face felt a burning pain, but her heart felt much more relaxed. It feels so good to be reborn. Today she is going to let go of all the unpleasant experiences of the past. She looked up at the bright and clear glow, forcing back the tears that were about to overflow. After 3 years of miserable escape, I still have to go back. Yan Qing's eyes became increasingly clear. She wanted to go back to Be City, retrieve what belonged to her, pay off the debt she owed, and start a beautiful life of her own. Although it has delayed me for several years, today will always be my youngest day, and it's not too late to start, is it? Her child can no longer be criticized and cursed like her. Her baby will definitely have a brighter and brighter future. Yan Qing, who was detached from her emotions, suddenly felt that her mission was significant and her whole being ignited. When Yan Qingxiong was preparing to briskly walk through the underground passage, he habitually glanced at the newly displayed magazine at the roadside newsstand on the street corner and then stopped. She saw the golden seal character of that Business Week magazine at a glance. The man sat in front of an ebony desk with frameless glasses, only wearing a simple and well-fitting light-colored shirt, without any extra accessories. But that's all, just casually leaning against the back of the chair reveals the luxurious aura of the whole body, and the piercing gaze that captures the soul looks straight at the camera, as if it can penetrate people's hearts. Not seen in 3 years, this man has changed a lot from the gentle appearance in Yan Qing's memory, but still, the same will make her irresistible. It was none other than Yan Huaiwen, the helmsman of the commercial giant Zhiheng Group, who appeared on the opening cover of this highest-priced business publication. Just as Yan Qing was about to reach out and pick up the magazine, a little girl suddenly approached and couldn't help but scream with excitement. "It's Yan de Lao Ah. Thank goodness, after running to so many stores, they are all out of stock. The Business Weekly with my banquet is so popular that I finally saw something for sale." As he spoke, he gasped for breath, indicating that he had really come from a distance. The little sisters in the group said that there were still some here, and they did not go for nothing. They got it. The believer would rather not drink milk tea today. They put their hands together as if they were fulfilling their wish. Yan Qing looked at the lively expression on the little girl's face and laughed inwardly, retracting her hand from reaching out to the magazine. The little girl happily picked up the magazine and rubbed it against her chest as a treasure. "I'm going crazy. I'm so handsome and charming." The little girl introduced to her companion with a beaming expression, "It is truly a legend in the financial industry. Our business empire has recently expanded, not only entering the entertainment industry, but also acquiring several esports teams that I like. I know, Qi Shen and his team are currently in the esports division under Zhiheng Entertainment, and Yan always has a good eye." The girl next to her also agreed in admiration. Yan Qing looked at these two girls and praised Yan Huaiwen to the sky with every word you said. She couldn't help but curl her lips and smile. Yan Huaiwen, who has gone crazy, said. "Didn't you see that photo? Is there a melancholy in my eyes? Waiting for my wife on the 1123rd day, end of this chapter. Chapter 5. The Male God of Abstinence. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. The Male God of Abstinence. It's because she feels very familiar with this scene. In college, Yan Huaiwen was also a popular male god in their school's management department. As a former senior student at B University, Yan Huaiwen is occasionally invited back to his alma mater to participate in activities. Every time he appears, he admires a group of young girls who come to him, especially for the school anniversary. Almost every year, Yan Huaiwen comes back on time to attend. But Yan Qing, who was still a freshman at the time, didn't take it seriously. There were rumors that he would be mixed with moisture, but he was just a handsome and more golden man. As a beautiful academic powerhouse dedicated to studying at Shuangshan Online, Yan Qing was frantically using her pen in the library and sneered at her roommates for their promiscuous behavior, unwilling to be in the same class as them. Isn't it good to practice more questions and win more scholarships? Hard work never fails. Yan Qing, a third-year student, achieved top grades. As the only outstanding student representative, she spoke on stage during the 100th anniversary celebration of B University. Therefore, for the first time, I saw the legendary demeanor of Yan Xuechang. The handsome and prosperous business tycoon sat in the first row of the auditorium, chatting and laughing with the school leaders beside him. Her gaze would occasionally sweep over her as a student representative speaking in front of the stage. Yan Qing had originally memorized a fairly fluent speech script, but unexpectedly made a mistake. I am very honored to be at this special time and moment. As students, we should grasp the pulse of the times, prepare ourselves and set sail. Because as soon as Yan Huaiwen's gaze came over, she involuntarily stuttered and almost bit her tongue. The person couldn't help but laugh at the situation and smiled like a bright moon, burning Yan Qing's eyes and imprinting it on her heart. Thank you everyone. Yan Qing blushed and went down to the stage. Before taking a few steps, Professor Zhang smiled and waved at her, specifically calling her over. Xiao Yan, this child is from our finance department, named Yan Qing. He is talented and hardworking, and the required courses in his major have set a new record for your best grades in history, Professor Zhang proudly introduced. Such an excellent lover, Zhang Laoshi has to send him to Zhiheng. Yan Huaiwen joked. I know you are strict there, but you can really learn real skills, so I want this child to go and experience it, so it's not worth following me. I have to say that only by following you can we learn true skills. Professor Zhang gave him a blank glance and sighed helplessly, I am currently lacking in skills. The academic affairs director's old man took his wife on a trip, and he is now at ease. As a result, he has entrusted me with all the administrative work. I'll leave this good seedling to you. Don't bully her, take care of me, the professor earnestly instructed. I will strictly abide by my teacher's orders. Yan Huaiwen agreed with a smile and turned his head to look at Yan Qing, his eyes bright and gentle. He first extended his hand and said, Hello, Yan classmate. This hand had distinct and powerful joints, warmly wrapping her hand completely. Yan Qing's hand sank in, and her heart also sank in. Young and reckless, Yan Qing slapped her face hard after that. During the months of her internship at Zhiheng, she became more and more trapped. But the more she likes Yan Huaiwen, the deeper she hides it. As a result, most of B didn't know that the financial department's department members fell in love at first sight with that famous senior banquet student, and their love grew deeply. Yan Qing, who was lost in memories, was attracted by a burst of screams and turned her head to look at a trendy gossip magazine. What is this? Look at this. A mysterious girl from the legendary business nightclub, staying overnight in a fragrant boudoir. I wrote it blindly. This picture is so blurry that even my own mother may not know it. How could it be? The angle of this gossip magazine's sneak shots is very tricky, and in the mosaic-filled blurry picture, the man's silhouette is tough and handsome. The woman, who was held by the man on her back and wrapped in her arms, only revealed a silhouette and couldn't see her face clearly, but their positions were very intimate. Yan Qing is somewhat face-blind in recognizing people, but only Yan Huaiwen can firmly say that she will never admit her mistake. It's him. Yan Qing frowned and said confidently. The two girls looked at the woman who was making a sound and took a deep breath together, forgetting to refute for a moment. This woman's eyebrows and eyes are exquisitely exquisite, and at first glance, she only feels bright and radiant. Isn't this the vivid and seductive slut in movies and TV dramas? Isn't it, the seductive beauty? And a few more glances gave another feeling, that overly beautiful and charming appearance was perfectly balanced by a gentle temperament, which was particularly attractive to people's minds. Appreciating beautiful women is certainly important, but the little girl's intention to correct her idol's name took the lead, and she regained her senses first. She said bluntly, "Although you are a beauty, your eyes are not good. We, Mr. Yan, are all diligent and busy with work, with no scandals. His lover is just working to earn money, okay? Unlike the young master Lu Nan from Chinfeng Real Estate, he never colludes with any messy women." The more she spoke, the more proud she became, as if she had seen the person in her mouth do things with her own eyes. Yan, the big shot, is pure and innocent, sitting upright. Yan Qing, who was accused of having bad looks, didn't get angry. She analyzed the girl's words and said, "Oh. So, Yan Huaiwen is a male god of abstinence." She pretended to tilt her head and ponder for a moment, then pouted and began to give Yan Huaiwen, who was hugging other women, dirty water. "I heard that this type of person is prone to old house fires, and the power of capital is terrifying. No one dares to expose his information. He is now 30 years old, maybe he has given birth to several children now." The little girl who was hinted that her idol had collapsed suddenly became furious and began to bombard Yan Qing. Staring wide-eyed, his small mouth shot like a cannon, and he started firing at a lightning-fast pace. "How do you know? Did you have surveillance footage at his home or gave birth to him? Without real evidence, don't make wild guesses. Spreading rumors has zero cost, but refuting them would cost you a leg. Do you know that? Be careful, I will contact Zhiheng's legal department to sue you for defamation." Yan Qing didn't expect the little girl's combat power to be so amazing. She remained silent and dared not speak. The other friend next to her touched the little girl's arm, gesturing for her to calm down a bit. Yan Qing swore that she had actually unintentionally seen the phone screensaver of the girl who had been well advised. It was Qi Shen, the captain of a certain esports team, whom she had just mentioned, with a mischievous expression in her eyes. Yan Qing suddenly felt that she had been spiced in the eyes. Qi Zhou is usually the most lazy person, and the contrast between appearing on camera and her daily life is too great. She endured it and couldn't help but speak up. "Do you like Qi Zhou? If someone else likes him, he comes privately for smoking, drinking, and everything." This is the first time Yan Qing did not follow the usual practice of buying a magazine with Yan Huaiwen, but left in a gloomy manner under the seemingly cannibalistic gaze of two little girls. But the sour mood that arose from seeing intimate photos of men and other women improved again in a conversation with these two energetic girls. There are so many people in this world, how fortunate she was to have met Yan Huaiwen. Wang wife stoned Yan Huaiwen. How fortunate is he? Why haven't you come back yet? End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Is me, Yan Huaiwen. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 is me, Yan Huaiwen. A month later, on the 6th floor of the Grand Hyatt, one of the top hotels in B City, there was a private room called Sleeping in the Snow. "Mr. Li, I have a toast to you." The woman's bare hands, without using ko-dan, have shiny and plump nails. At this moment, she is holding a wine glass, reflecting a pair of delicate and even whiter skin. The owner of this hand, every frown and smile is full of charm. Yan Qing could sense that from the moment she entered the room, Mr. Li stared at her with a seemingly expressionless gaze. While holding her cup, she took the opportunity to touch the back of her hand and took a deep breath, suppressing the nausea. She prefers to engage in verbal conversations at a negotiation table where everyone is engaged, rather than at a table where glasses are exchanged. She is usually most tired of such empty and insincere occasions, and these men insist on discussing important matters in places with beautiful lights and sounds. However, today was her first business deal transferred from the branch to the headquarters, and the entire team was chatting at the table. She could only follow along. With the explicit consent of the group's director Lu, she was also given 2 glasses of red wine. The waiter opened another bottle of red wine, and she took the initiative to get up and take it. When she turned to her side, she accidentally stumbled and collided directly with the bottle mouth. The crimson liquid instantly overflowed the bottle mouth, staining the front of Yan Qing's white coat red. "Mr. Li, Mr. Lu, please take your time first. I'll go to the restroom to deal with the wine stains and go back as soon as I go." Yan Qing stood up from the table with a bright smile. "Xiao Yan, why are you so careless? Go and go back quickly." "Me, hiccup, I'm waiting for you to come back here." Mr. Li had already drunk too much, and he was talking with a hiccup. With a smile on his face, his flesh seemed to be squeezed together, and he looked at Yan Qing with a cold sensation. After coming out of the private room and breathing fresh air, Yan Qing immediately took a deep breath. She stood in front of the bright and spacious mirror in the restroom, touching her slightly rosy cheeks with her hand. Sure enough, there was a bit of alcohol heat, and the ends of her eyes were slightly flushed. Reaching out her hand, the faucet sensed the water coming out. She didn't pay attention to the clothes splashed with red wine, but instead vigorously rubbed the inch of skin that had been touched by the salty pig hand, until the back of her hand turned red before stopping. Yan Qing frowned, as if she still felt uncomfortable being touched. "Director Yan." Someone pushed open the bathroom door and warmly called out to her from behind. She looked back and saw that she was a female colleague who was not yet familiar with the company. This time we were discussing cooperation, and it seemed that she was a capable subordinate of Lu Dong. Just now, she was good at dancing at the table, which made several leaders interested. Compared to her, she was like a wooden person. Yan Qing couldn't even remember the other person's name, so she could only signal with a smile. "Lu Dong said that our case tonight has been settled, and now we have arranged for everyone to rest at the Grand Hyatt Hotel. We will have a day off tomorrow, and I have specially selected a high-level VIP suite for you." The female colleague blinked at her like a gift. Yan Qing instinctively wanted to refuse, but her female colleague was very friendly. In addition, it was indeed too late tonight, and her alcohol tolerance has not been good. Since that night 3 years ago, she has tried her best to avoid drinking. Today, I made an exception and drank alcohol. I felt dizzy and confused, and it was not convenient to go back. After a little thought, she took the room card and smiled, saying, "Thank you." After the scene ended, Yan Qing took the elevator directly to the 19th floor of the hotel and found room 1916 marked on the room card. She closed the door and took off her exquisite professional coat as she walked, wearing only the champagne-colored silk suspender underneath. She walked straight to the inside and collapsed on the king bed, feeling motionless after sinking into the soft mattress. Half asleep and half awake, Yan Qing still felt that she should get up and take off her makeup and do some grooming, but her head was dizzy and her body was also filled with a hot sensation. She impatiently kicked the blanket away. Click is the sound of the door lock being opened in the room. Someone was approaching, and a pungent aroma of alcohol and a fusion of greasy food filled her surroundings. Yan Qing frowned displeasedly and regained a lot of consciousness. "Xiao Qing, wait a long time." A short and thick hand belonging to a man couldn't wait to touch her face, and was about to dive down. Yan Qing's irritability level reached its peak tonight. Suddenly, there was a loud bang, the sound of heavy objects falling to the ground. Even though Yan Qing's consciousness was a bit unclear and her body was feeling extremely uncomfortable, her combat power still exploded. She became alert when there was any movement at the door, secretly accumulating her strength. When the villain approached, she punched him directly, and finally used a skillful twist to flip the man with ulterior motives to the ground. She was the champion of the Provincial Youth Karate Championship back then, but her skills were still not as good as before. Fortunately, her basic skills had declined, and Yan Qing was moving her slightly sore wrist. With the dim light, she could see clearly the face full of flesh, which was Mr. Li trying to take advantage of herself at the table. "You're such a terrible shoe, you're shameless. Let go of me, otherwise you won't want to leave Junyue alive." Mr. Li tore his face and cursed loudly when he saw that the bully was not successful. "Mr. Li, I'm so scared." After listening to the threatening words, Yan Qing replied sarcastically, and instead put more force on her feet. "Pain, pain, pain. Let go of me, you shrew." Mr. Li, who was lecherous and spineless, could only lie on the ground and howl. Yan Qing, who was even more troubled by the crying and howling, became even more agitated. Impatiently, he gave him a hand knife and knocked Mr. Li unconscious. This time, he was completely quiet. She was about to get up and call the front desk of the hotel. Why does Li always have her room card? It seems that this situation was not a mistake, but a blatant attempt to bully her. She was preparing to discuss with the hotel how to handle this matter, whether to call the police or what to do. Yan Qing, who was thinking, was startled. In the room that had not been quiet for 2 minutes, there was another loud bang. The door was suddenly kicked open, and a few people burst in, dressed as hotel security personnel. Led by a handsome young man with seductive peach blossom eyes and a promiscuous aristocratic appearance, he stared at the highly impactful scene in front of him in astonishment. A charming young woman was riding on the plump belly of a bald man, panting lightly on his greasy body. At first glance, it could indeed be misleading. The young man leaned against the door and joked with a smile, "Oh, you're playing quite wild. Is this hitting from the head of the bed to the end of the bed?" Yan Qing wanted to see who the person standing at the door watching jokes was, but the lights were dim and the door was a bit far from the bedside. So she squinted her eyes and asked a sincere question from the bottom of her heart, "Handsome guy, who are you? You guys go back first, we don't need you for the time being." Based on the situation, the young man turned around and said to the people behind him. "Yes, Mr. Liu." The security personnel responded and left. "Miss, you called Brother Wen first, right?" Lu Nan hugged her arm and asked leisurely. "He couldn't leave for a moment, so let me come over and take a look. It seems that Brother Wen shouldn't be worried about your safety, he should be worried about that one." Lu Nan finished speaking and pointed to the middle-aged man lying on the ground in the shape of a corpse, with a frivolous smile on his lips. Yan Qing's brain was a bit slow and didn't quite understand what he was saying. When did she call? Call Brother Wen. Who is Wen Gu? She murmured everything in her heart as she thought. "It's me, Yan Huaiwen." A noble and cold voice sounded behind the door, and Yan Qing was immediately at a loss, turning her head stiffly to look over. "Yes, that's right, it's Mr. Yan." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Who is Husband? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Who is Husband? The newcomer is dressed in a suit and leather shoes, with a clear and handsome face, and his every move exudes the imposing aura of a high-ranking official. The attire is more grand than usual, with a platinum brooch hanging on the chest of a cheetah, adorned with round and cut sapphires, which are immediately valuable. Upon closer inspection, the chest beneath the brooch was still fluctuating, and the man was clutching his phone tightly, clearly rushing over from an important banquet. "You came so quickly. I just arrived a few minutes ago, those old folks are willing to let you go first." Lu Nan asked in some surprise, and knowingly turned aside to make way for the entrance. Yan Huaiwen nodded towards Lu Nan and strode towards the woman who suddenly disappeared 3 years ago. Yan Qing's eyes were stunned, and she didn't even know where to swing her hand. She looked straight at the contour she had seen 1,000 times in her dream, endlessly zooming in and becoming clearer. Yan Huaiwen was getting closer and closer to himself, so close that even the large shadows cast by his eyelashes could be clearly seen, and he could even feel the cool night air on his body. Yan Qing couldn't distinguish whether it was a dream or reality, murmuring softly, "How could it be? Don't know me." The voice was still so clear and pleasant, but with a hint of coolness. This tone made her feel a chill in her heart, and she shook her head. How could she not recognize it? Yan Huaiwen saw the woman's expression turn from confusion to sadness, and his face remained calm, unable to distinguish between joy and anger. Not seen in 3 years. Since returning to B City and being in the same work circle, Yan Qing knew in her heart that they would see each other sooner or later. Despite making a lot of psychological preparations, she did not expect such a situation to occur when they met again. Seeing it all of a sudden, Yan Qing's mind was still empty. Originally, his mind crashed after getting drunk, and he couldn't react quickly. Now he was completely in a mess, constantly cutting and sorting. She swallowed uncontrollably, glanced nervously at Lu Nan, the handsome guy with peach blossom eyes whom she had just met for the first time, hoping that he could help her. Lu Nan shrugged his shoulders, looking helpless. Because Yan Huaiwen, who usually keeps his emotions confidential, had a visibly bad expression at this moment. He looked at Yan Qing wearing only a thin suspender, with a large area of fair and tender skin exposed outside. His face was as dark as a pot, and his tone became extremely cold. It's been so long since we've seen each other, Miss Yan has really developed her skills. Although Yan Qing had never seen the person in front of her getting angry, she accurately sensed that Yan Huaiwen's emotions were extremely bad, and her radar for survival was beeping. She keenly sensed that this might be a sign of this person's anger, and her gaze dodged, feeling guilty and hesitant to look directly at him. Get up. Yan Huaiwen was unable to suppress his anger. At this moment, she realized that she was still sitting on the fat-headed and big-eared Mr. Li, and Yan Huaiwen's gaze seemed to be about to crush the middle-aged man under her. Mr. Yan probably doesn't think he wants to outdo this old bald guy, does he? Yan Qing was completely confused in her panic and lost all her intelligence and energy. She saw that Mr. Li was still fainting, but all she wanted was for Mr. Li, who had not yet committed any wrongdoing, to wake up quickly. It would be best if she could explain to the people present before fainting. How should we handle this situation? Someone always needs to say something, and Yan Qing had a sudden idea when she thought of a line commonly used in movies and TV shows. The mouth is faster than the brain, and Yan Qing, who was active in learning and using, cleared her throat in a serious manner. Immediately after, she swung her fist and struck Mr. Li's head hard. Get up quickly, don't pretend to be unable to sleep, my husband has come to catch the adultery. Anxiously speaking with a tone that is 10 out of 10, the voice is as clear as pearls and jade. Unfortunately, Mr. Li remained motionless and did not wake up, unable to appreciate her poor acting skills. As soon as the words fell, the atmosphere in the room became eerie and awkward. Husband. The man raised his eyebrows and murmured these 2 words meaningfully. Yan Qing was the first to break free from petrification, but she hesitated and couldn't say a word. She casually touched her neck, waiting for her hair to drop. When did you get married? No. I'm not married, I am, that's just a metaphor, a common rhetorical device. Oh. Those present, who are you referring to as the main body? Lu Nan interjected awkwardly. He waved his hand, squinted his peach blossom eyes, and smiled with a ripple on his face. Miss Yan, this is the first time we've seen each other, isn't it possible that they fell in love with me at first sight? This is my husband. Before finishing speaking, a cold arrow-like gaze shot over Lu Nan received the signal and immediately turned around with a pursed mouth. Yan Qing's forehead was sweating with anxiety, feeling that there were too many mistakes. She was busy changing the topic and said, "Oh, he has fainted. It's better for me to get up first." As she was about to get up, Yan Qing realized that her feet were tingling with unbearable soreness, and the carpet material was so soft and sticky that it was difficult to rely on. She wobbled and couldn't stand steady. He plunged into Yan Huaiwen's arms again. This scene is damn similar. The atmosphere was completely deadlocked. Yan Qing didn't dare to move. Listening to the steady heartbeat under the warm chest, he smelled the cool perfume that belonged to men, and his face burned. Lu Nan, who was watching from the side, was also dumbfounded. Just now, an old man who was almost twice his size was mercilessly hanged by a woman under the bed. At this moment, she was weakly and obediently nestled in Yan Huaiwen's arms, with seductive eyes and a blushing face, like a little quail. The most calm person in the room was Yan Huaiwen, who calmly took off his suit jacket and covered Yan Qing's body. Throwing oneself into one's arms and embrace is becoming more and more accurate. Yan Huaiwen's tone was plain, but he couldn't see the anger just now. Glancing at her several times, he repeatedly confirmed that Yan Qing had not exposed any skin, and calmly lifted her horizontally. Yan Qing let out a small exclamation of surprise. "Leaving my husband." The voice regained its usual warmth, but the meaning in the words was not very polite. Lu Nan was dumbfounded again. His brother went actively teasing the little girl. Suddenly, his gaze towards Yan Qing changed. No wonder he was glared at just now. How he looked at her now, how he looked like the evil country demon concubine. The man's aura of speaking pounced on her ear, and the itching in Yan Qing's ears lingered in her heart. She nodded slightly. Yan Huaiwen seemed to smile. She boldly leaned her face against the warm chest, feeling particularly secure. This was the first time she had felt this way since she was so old. Before leaving the hotel room, Yan Huaiwen had not forgotten his good brother and left an emotionless sentence towards Lu Nan. "Take care of the aftermath." The busy tool man Lu Nan couldn't lift his lips anymore as he looked at the man holding the beautiful woman and leaving the Grand Hyatt with a graceful posture. Watching the two of them leave, Lu Nan reluctantly made a phone call, gritted his teeth, and spoke in a tone that was not friendly. "Give the CEO of Zhiheng a call. Tell him to come and lift people in 1916 himself. If you haven't arrived here in 5 minutes, throw out the people in the room and don't dirty my place. Single dog Lu Nan. You little couple, whimpering." End of this chapter. Chapter 8. For your return. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. For your return. At the main entrance of the Grand Hyatt Hotel, a low-key Bentley is waiting. The driver respectfully opened the car door, and Yan Huaiwen placed Yan Qing firmly on the leather seat. He also sat down beside him and remained silent for a while before speaking. "Uncle Lin, drive back to Nanyuan." The man and woman who were just intimately hugging each other chose to remain silent all the way. At first, Yan Qing secretly glanced at the man's expression, his resolute figure particularly cold and hard, and didn't know how to speak for a moment. The car was driving steadily, and the temperature of the air conditioning was just right. The person next to her had a refreshing scent like cedar, which made her unconsciously feel at ease. Yan Qing relaxed her mind, and with the strong aftertaste of being drunk, she fell asleep at some point. This sleep is particularly down-to-earth and sweet. When she woke up again, the car was parked in the garage and the driver was nowhere to be seen. The man next to him was closing his eyes, as peaceful as a painting, with a noble expression between his eyebrows and eyes. Yan Qing traced the man's face from bottom to top with her gaze, from the sideburns that seemed to be cut by a knife to the straight bridge of her nose. Although the eyes in her memory, which could hold the vast pine breeze and all things, were not opened, she could still think of the brilliance within. She couldn't help but reach out her hand, wanting to touch it from afar, but suddenly someone grabbed her wrist. Yan Huaiwen opened his eyes and looked at her with a sharp gaze, as deep as a night that could devour all things. In the car where only the two of them were alone, Yan Qingqi felt a little scared and squeezed out a few words with a dry throat. "Hello, Mr. Yan. Okay. Where am I okay?" Yan Huaiwen said with some self-deprecation. He lowered his eyes and couldn't distinguish emotions, but the big hand that held her wrist never let go. "Why did you come back at this time?" He finally asked the question. "For you," Yan Qing seemed to sense the man's low mood and answered without hesitation. Since the sound of her husband calling out, Yan Qing realized that she had become much bolder, in other words, she had broken the jar and fallen a lot. The man's breath froze, his eyes exploring her. As soon as Yan Qing finished speaking, she changed her mind. How could she have the courage to tease Yan Huaiwen? She pondered and came up with a more convincing reason. "Mr. Yan, I'm joking. It's because the company is on loan, and I've been transferred from a branch in Yaoqing to work at the headquarters." Yan Huaiwen snorted coldly and looked at her flushed cheeks. Perhaps it is the soil and water in the south that nourishes people, and Yan Qing's appearance becomes even more beautiful, like the blooming peonies waiting for people to pick. This face is more alluring than a few years ago, with a slight upward movement at the end of the eyes, which makes them moist, bright and alluring. Yan Huaiwen's heart moved slightly, her tall figure moved, and her posture forcefully enveloped her under her shadow. That deep and magnetic voice sounded in her ear. "Did you drink tonight?" Yan Qing, who was hit hard by the man's delicate facial features, replied dumbfounded, "How did Mr. Yan know?" "I drank it, but not much, just 2 glasses of red wine." Yan Qing extended 2 fingers and shook them in front of him. Yan Huaiwen's eyes suddenly darkened as he said, "You're so drunk after 2 glasses, you dare to drink." He felt the pulse under the wrist held by his fingers, bouncing vigorously and happily. "Your heart is beating so fast, what are you nervous about?" "I'm not nervous, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that one person can't help but knock you down." Of course, Yan Qing only dares to say this in her heart. "How could you be nervous? Mr. Yan hasn't seen him for many years, he's still so handsome and extraordinary." Yan Qing began to enter the praise mode with a smile, but she also spoke the truth. After hearing this, Yan Huaiwen sneered and then asked, "Who is that person from the hotel? How did they appear in your room?" "He is a major client of our company and has business to discuss today. He must have drunk too much and walked into the wrong room. I can handle it myself, Mr. Yan." Yan Qing knew in her heart that telling the truth was the best way. Yan Huaiwen would most likely lend a helping hand, but she was very uncomfortable and didn't want him to hear about such an embarrassing situation happening to her. There are a lot of opportunistic tactics of those old-timers of Zhiheng. I can guess that they want to use. In the dim light inside the car, he paused as he looked at his face, which was clearly frowning but still pretending to be strong. "What are you doing with me?" Yan Qing, who was listening attentively, was puzzled and wanted to know the following. Yan Huaiwen leaned over with a deep voice and said these 3 words in her ear. "Beauty trap. Under the moon, I admire flowers, under the lamp, I admire beauties." Yan Huaiwen also had to admit that there was indeed a unique charm, especially with such a charming beauty. He suddenly reached out and touched Yan Qing's waist. Yan Qing's back stiffened and he dared not move. "Mr. Yan," he said. "I saw him take out a cigarette pack from the pocket of the suit jacket he was wearing." Immersed in the temptation of admiring men up close, she briefly lost her ability to think. He pressed down the car window, ready to light the cigarette in his hand. Yan Qing only saw the beautiful lips open and close, spitting out 2 words. "Get off the car." She obediently opened the car door, but encountered a difficult problem while preparing to get down. Yan Qing turned back dryly and said, "Mr. Yan, I didn't bring my shoes out." Yes, when she bravely fought against evil forces, not only did she not wear shoes, but she also did not wear socks. Pretty, wait. Although he said so, Yan Huaiwen immediately put back the unlit cigarette, took a long step, and quickly got off the car to walk to her end. Once again, tightly embrace Yan Qing in your arms. I can actually do it myself, she whispered as she spoke. She had just been called pretentious, but she was really greedy for the warmth in her arms. After several ideological struggles, she decided to give up struggling. Until sitting on the soft and elastic big bed, Yan Qing remained in a dazed state. She didn't expect to receive such treatment. She was carried all the way through the door and even qualified to enter the master bedroom of the villa, sleeping on Yan Huaiwen's bed. Unable to sleep until Mr. Yan, sleeping in his bed is also a kind of success. Yan Qing thought happily. Before, she had never visited Yan Huaiwen's villa in Nanyuan, only heard of him having such a mansion in Nancheng. The entire room is a monotonous light color scheme, with a typical cool and indifferent style. The furnishings and decorations are really bold, elegant and luxurious. She seemed to be in an art museum, where there was no sense of home. Looking at these famous paintings and decorations, her face was clear and gloomy, full of the breath of money. A familiar melody sounded, and the ringtone of the phone rang. It was still the pure music that had been used for many years. Yan Qing specifically searched for this song, and the single went through thousands of cycles. Yan Huaiwen looked at the call and frowned slightly. I'll take the call first, you can do it yourself, he said. Then he turned around and walked out of the room. It seemed like he was going to handle business, and Yan Qingmu watched as he left. In the study, Yan Huaiwen glanced at the caller and predicted what was going on. He answered the phone. Mom. Don't explain, this is your husband. Dare to shout. OS, the author who is walking on the front line of CP, end of this chapter. Chapter 9. Emergency Call. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9 Emergency Call, where have you been? Come back quickly. Mrs. Yan's tone on the other end of the phone was flat. Yan Huaiwen walked to the window and looked at the colorful night outside, explaining, there's something urgent, so I left early. I can't go back now. What's urgent? It's even more important than your grandfather's 80th birthday. You know what your grandfather loves the most about you. Suddenly leaving the scene has caused a lot of trouble. You'd better give me a reasonable explanation. The proud Yan mother snorted coldly. Yan Huaiwen admitted his mistake with a good attitude, it's my fault. I really can't leave today. I'll go back to the Lin family's old house tomorrow and explain it to my grandfather in person. Stinky kid, if you don't come over tomorrow, I'll personally go and catch you back. Yan's mother's indifference finally couldn't keep up. He chuckled and said again that he would definitely return on time before asking, is there anything else? What's wrong? President Yan, whose work is more important than anything else, your time is so precious. Do we have to charge you by the second when we talk on the phone? I'll call you 10 million, and I'll take care of tonight's time, Yan's mother teased angrily. President Yan, who was silenced by his mother's words and unable to speak, rationally chose to remain silent and listen to training, but unexpectedly, Yan's mother started a new conversation. In a few months, you will be 30 years old, and your competitiveness will not be comparable to that of a young and strong young man. So when you see a girl who suits you, hurry up and catch her, Yan Fu said with a long voice. My mom has been watching popular TV dramas lately, which can be considered keeping up with the trend of the times and broadening her mind a lot. Even the one who gets married first and then loves is fine, and my mom doesn't mind the other girl's background. As long as you like and can accept it, even some tricks and tactics are harmless. After retiring, Lady Yan Lin and Rome became addicted to watching various romantic films and TV dramas. The more outrageous the plot, the more she enjoyed watching it. Mom, what are you talking about? Yan Huaiwen helped his forehead, feeling a bit overwhelmed. The third child of the Zhiheng family next door has given birth to a little girl again. Anyway, hurry up and fight for some anger, do you hear me? Mrs. Yan suddenly stopped talking and hurriedly said, "Oh my, the 178th episode of Little Escape Wife has been updated. I won't tell you for now. Goodbye." Mr. Yan, who suddenly hung up on the phone, couldn't help but laugh and cry. He reminisced about Ms. Lin's previous words, "Is it not impossible to get married first and then love?" He looked at the lights outside the window, lost in thought for a long time. Yan Qing suddenly remembered what the handsome guy with peach blossom eyes had said. She called Yan Huaiwen first, so she started searching for her phone, only to find that she had also forgotten it in the hotel room. She walked out of the room, feeling extremely disoriented. She walked back and forth here a few times, not knowing which one was the study. At this moment, she was standing at the entrance of the hall, pondering whether the study had entered through the outer staircase or in the basement, lost in thought. "Where are you going?" Yan Huaiwen saw her standing at the door and thought she was leaving again, his eyes darkened. "Mr. Yan." Yan Qing's eyes lit up and she ran over happily. "I also left my phone at the hotel. Could you please help me retrieve it?" She looked at him with an expectant expression on her face. Before Yan Hui could hear a response, she muttered to herself, "The phone is pink, the phone case is a vegetable dog, it's just a pizza gnawing on cabbage." The word Maya was swallowed back. Yan Huaiwen was like a magician, like Doraemon, taking out a phone from his pocket and handing it to her. "Thank you, Mr. Yan." Yan Qing gave him a bright smile as a reward. After receiving the phone, Yan Qing smoothly returned to the room on the second floor under Yan Huaiwen's kind instructions. She immediately made a video call to go out. "Auntie, I'm sorry for calling you so late. Is Run Run okay? No crying, right?" Yan Qing asked softly. The aunt on the other end of the phone said she was very well behaved and went to bed early, so she finally felt relieved. Her little baby Run Run is now very lively and intelligent, at the age of babbling, already able to say short sentences, making a lot of noise every day. The scene of the video revolves around a 2-year-old baby sleeping on a pink-blue bed, with tender white hands curled up in front of her chest, sleeping soundly. "Good baby," Yan Qing murmured with a gentle smile on her face. Because Run Run was born with weak health, she put in a lot of effort and returned to be city. She found a patient and meticulous gold medal baby care sister in law to help take care of the child. In Yaocheng, she went from being a small marketing assistant to becoming the vice president of a branch company. When she was so tired that she was about to collapse, her baby was her source of strength. In order to earn a moist milk powder money, this novice mother has also gone to great lengths. As long as she sees this little one's playful smile, she can persevere no matter how difficult it is, because it is the best gift from heaven for her. After the video was hung up, Yan Qing suddenly thought of something. She started flipping through her call records to find out when she called Yan Huaiwen. She has no impression at all, theoretically she shouldn't have. She didn't drink any fragments this time. In no time, she flipped through a dialed phone record, and although there was no note on the phone number, she was very familiar with it. This number is her first priority for emergency calls. It's Mr. Yan's phone number. Most likely, when solving that old color embryo, I accidentally pressed it, Yan Qingxin thought. But when she saw the call time, Yan Qing was stunned. The call record shows that it was a call made at 9:10 p.m., with a duration of 58 minutes and 15 seconds. This indicates that when she accidentally dialed this call, she was still asleep in the hotel. Will you stay connected for almost an hour when you receive such an unfamiliar phone call without any sound? That peach blossom-eyed handsome guy came so promptly. Does this mean that Yan Huaiwen didn't hang up after he answered the phone, and he was always listening carefully to her voice and paying attention to the movements on her end? At the first moment she encountered danger, she came over from the banquet. Is it representing Yan Huaiwen? He is really a great person. Yan Qing dare not do what he wants. The sound of knocking on the door interrupted Yan Qing's thoughts. She ran to open the door, and when she saw Yan Huaiwen wearing a light gray home uniform outside, her eyes seemed to be fixed. He must have just taken a shower, and this was the first time she had seen Yan Huaiwen wearing casual clothes in private. Without the blessing of a suit, the elite style is reduced, the hair is soft and smooth, reducing a bit of a cold aura, but the whole person is a bit more soft and casual. Yan Qing immediately remembered what Yan Huaiwen was like during his college years. The elegant young master is as gentle as jade. She once regretted not being able to witness the demeanor of the senior student at that time with her own eyes, and did not expect to achieve her wish today. Yan Huaiwen handed over the tray in his hand, which contained a glass of honey water and an antidote. Drink some honey water, just take 1 pill of this medicine to avoid getting a headache tomorrow morning. His tone was light, but both inside and outside of the words were meant to be caring. Do you want to come in and sit down? At present, Yan Qing chooses to follow her true intention and strive for more time to spend together. Late at night, when she made such an invitation to the man, did she know what was going on? Yan Huaiwen's gaze followed her all the time. After speaking, Yan Qing felt a bit strange. This is Yan Huaiwen's home, she is a guest, and her invitation is not quite right. She moved her toes with some embarrassment and unease, and Yan Huaiwen clearly followed her movements, noticing the sparkling and pink toes. Put on your slippers. The man's icy aura has returned. Yan Qing immediately obediently turned around and entered the door, neatly putting on her slippers and looking back at him like an invitation. Yan Huaiwen also followed her in, but after placing the tray on the cabinet near the head of the bed, he turned around and left. Yan Qing bit her lip in frustration, wondering what she was looking forward to. The dark night can make people weak, and it can also make people want to hide their feelings and accidentally run out. Looking forward to it, I am so excited. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. I'm right, I don't agree. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10. I'm right, I don't agree. Yan Qing's biological clock has always been very punctual. At 7:15, she stretched her arms and sat with her eyes closed, preparing to wake up. She felt the bed was particularly comfortable today and couldn't help but roll a few times on the bed. Oh, why is this bed so big? After opening her eyes in confusion, she saw the unfamiliar room and instantly regained consciousness from a state of confusion. This is in Yan Huaiwen's home, this bed is his bed, occupied by himself. Yan Qing quickly tidied up herself, but when she went downstairs, she didn't see the figure of that person, but it seemed like she could smell a few strands of rice fragrance. Good morning, Miss Yan. A woman in her 50s, wearing an apron, greeted her kindly. Yan Qing politely replied, good morning, too. The woman in front of me was not painted with makeup, with a plain face facing the sky, but she was incredibly beautiful. The woman seemed to notice her discomfort and said gently, the young master has something to do and left early. He specifically instructed me to prepare breakfast for Miss Yan. All the items you missed last night are here, let's see if there are any missing. Yan Qing took it with both hands and expressed gratitude. You're welcome, Miss Yan. Just call me Lin Ma. Come and have dinner now. Yan Qing was indeed hungry, so she no longer politely went to the table to have breakfast. There were both Chinese and Western-style dishes, which were nutritious and delicious. Lin's mother has superb cooking skills. She has never eaten such delicious home-cooked food before. Yan Xiaorong never cared about her food, or in other words, she never cared about her. Yan Qing, who had not received such care since childhood, had a warm meal that warmed her stomach and heart. Eat more, you can't follow girls' weight loss and dieting habits nowadays. Eat more breakfast, it's okay. If it's not enough, I'll make it for you. Lin's mother not only has a good cooking skills, but also excels at persuading others to eat. With the gentle voice of the old man, she unconsciously ate a lot of food. During their conversation, she learned that Lin Mama was actually an elderly person in the Yan family's mansion. However, Yan Mama was worried about her son and arranged for Lin Mama to come here twice a week to cook delicious meals for Yan Huaiwen. Apart from having dedicated personnel to clean the villa every day, there is no one else present. Lin's mother is very well behaved. She didn't ask who she was, nor did she have any intention of inquiring about her identity. She only treated her as a guest and treated her carefully. "I've used it, thank you, Mom Lin. I still have work today, so I need to go out quickly." Yan Qing felt embarrassed and touched her slightly plump belly. "I really opened my mouth just now. I didn't eat much at the table last night, so I've been tossing and turning all night long." "You're welcome, as long as Miss Yan likes to eat, be sure to come frequently if you have the opportunity." Lin Mama kindly said, seeing this beautiful woman so fond of her cooking, she was also very pleased. She thought such a charming girl would be very picky, but she didn't expect her personality to be generous and gentle. After Yan Qing left the villa, Lin Mama could no longer suppress her excitement and called her own wife. "Madam. Last night, the young master had a female guest staying here. She just left this morning and looks so handsome." Lin's mother shared the latest intelligence with her own wife, and Yan Huaiwen heard that there was finally a woman around her, which made the master and servant extremely excited. "This child, I'm afraid it wasn't because of this young lady who had an urgent matter last night." Mrs. Yan immediately realized that her son, who was usually calm and well-behaved, had a panicked expression on his face for the first time. Ignoring important occasions, he tightly held his phone and quickly left the scene after saying something was wrong. "I'll just wait and see when he can bring this young lady back to the old house." Zhiheng Group headquarters. At this moment, only the most diligent director's office in the marketing department is still illuminated. This is not Yan Qing's passion for work to the point of fanaticism, but yesterday she said she would take an extra day off to console everyone who has been working overtime on projects recently. She forgot about it. Just arrived at the office and found that there was no one on the entire floor. She still looked at the messages in the group and remembered what had happened. Even then, there was still some work to be done. After handling some affairs, Yan Qing propped her chin and looked at the report in front of her, wondering what she was thinking. "I don't know how Yan Huaiwen arranged for that handsome guy with peach blossom eyes, Lu Nan, to handle the aftermath last night. Today, it was calm and no one came to settle accounts with her." Yan Qing felt strange. Mr. Li from Longyue didn't take any advantage of her and was beaten again. Would he let her go so easily? There are many doubts about last night's incident. How did that person get their hotel room card? Did Lu Dong and her female colleague also participate? Since they are not coming to find her, Yan Qing sneered, so she must take the initiative and find them to settle the matter. On the second day, the headquarters of Zhiheng Group exploded. "Oh my goodness, have you seen it? I just saw it, and when I first opened it, I was shocked. Isn't this a default within our company? This person is too brave. What, let me take a look too." Everyone is discussing, and the female protagonist at the center of this incident is the newly transferred marketing director from the branch office. Because all colleagues in the company received the same email through their corporate email, and the sender was Yan Qing. The subject of the email is, "Opposing Workplace Sexual Harassment," which details the process and outcome of last night's incident, along with photos of hotel surveillance and chat records with hotel front desk staff. After such a big incident, Yan Qing was immediately called to have a meeting with the senior management of the group. Yan Qing tidied up her clothes, confirmed that her makeup was correct, and then pushed open the door to the conference room. The 6 senior leaders should have just finished an emergency meeting, and the room is shrouded in smoke. They are probably smoking a lot of cigarettes, and everyone is worried about a solution to this matter. As she entered, they all looked at the bold woman who had just been transferred and was about to challenge authority. "Hello leaders," Yan Qing was not afraid of the stage and sat generously across from them after greeting. Yan Qing, what do you want to do? Ah. The chairman of the group, Lu Changfa, who took her to the dinner party, leaned back in his chair, squinting his hanging eyes and looking at the stubborn subordinate in front of him, making sarcastic remarks. Lu Dong, I don't want to do anything. Li Xingbin, the general manager of Longyue, sexually harassed me, and even sexually assaulted me. I need an explanation for last night's incident, so I am applying for a resolution. Yan Qing firmly met him and candidly expressed her demands. I really don't know how you became the vice president in the branch office. It's not just about having a meal, but also about any infringement. Let me ask you, where did you suffer? Lu Dong frowned and raised his volume, accusing her in a high voice as if he hated her. And the other leaders looked at the newly transferred beautiful subordinate with a playful expression. Yan Qingzhen couldn't understand Lu Dong's logic and was extremely disappointed with this company in her heart. The business of a legitimate company needs to rely on women to negotiate. Moreover, I don't want this kind of unwritten rule. Did any one of you greet me in advance? Have you asked me about my wishes? I didn't have any trouble at the hotel that night. What if something happened? Do you still want me to accept my fate? The handling plan has come down, you will be suspended from work. Lu Dong did not intend to continue arguing with her and impatiently announced the result of the handling. I'm right, I don't agree. Yan Qing stood up and glared angrily at the men present. Also, why is the room card in my hotel room in Li Xingbin's hands? What's going on? Does Mr. Lu also want to explain it to me? A teacup shattered at Yan Qing's feet, and Lu Dong pointed to her nose and shouted angrily, not satisfied with this solution. Then you go. The temple of Zhiheng is too small to keep you, the great Buddha. Yan Qing looked at the dignified middle-aged men in front of her, her heart completely cold. Bullying women was not a skill. With a glance, she picked up the etiquette waiter who was about to add water and pour tea, and the purple clay teapot in her hand hit Lu Dong's feet with precision, tit for tat. Sorry, my hands are slippery. Yan Qing casually pushed the door open and left a room full of stunned old men. Say no to workplace sexual harassment. I hope everyone can be as brave as Yan Qing. End of this chapter.